Hey, mate.
You can puffing up.
Hey, do you want to go to prison?
That shit.
I'm not being stupid.
It's bad, that. I haven't actually watched the full clip in a while. It's just mad, the language, though. Like I said to him, would you have been happy if you'd have hit us? And he said, yeah, I'd have been happy if I'd have wiped another off the road.
Stop. Kill me. Get in that car and think.
I just took another off the road after.
Wow.
Good one, good one. We'll put that on the internet and we'll see how proud you are of it. We'll see how proud you are of yourself later. Head.
Up cheese. Ah, nice one.
That was me earlier this year, after I was close passed by a motorist who then stopped his vehicle and started an unprovoked aggressive confrontation. Watching it back now, justified or not, I see road rage and anger on both sides. But it got me thinking, why do we see anger on our roads so often? Why are cyclists so often at the centre of it? And are incidents of road rage getting worse? And perhaps most importantly, what can be done to solve it? To understand this issue, I'm going to speak with an academic from the USA who calls himself the anger professor.
I've been talking about anger and researching anger and even working with angry clients for the last 20 plus years.
We're also going to hear from Jeremy Vine, a radio and TV presenter with an audience of many millions who also documents his cycling commutes on YouTube. We're going to hear how in some places this anger is fueling a dangerous culture war.
Disputes often becoming violent between cyclists and motorists.
And ask, is this as bad as some people lead us to think?
I think online you see a lot of very negative voices. I think on the streets I am only experiencing a more positive riding experience.
So I'm about to investigate a very angry problem.
Well, a road rage fight turned ugly in Brooklyn.
Then the passenger of the car got out and attacked him.
That weapon was a knife.
Becoming more and more common as we get more and more people out on bicycles.
It stems from a starting road rage type incident.
So far, the police say there have been no sightings of the car in which the
As a cyclist and road user, I must say most of my journeys are completed trouble-free. Everyone respects each other and I don't encounter any issues. And I've never viewed aggression towards me on the bike as a reason not to ride my bike. But still, it's always something I've had in the back of my mind because I know sometimes you can experience it. As my clip showed, it's not just motorists who get angry. Road rage isn't limited to one group. I've seen it from pedestrians, cyclists, drivers, and just about anyone on the road. It's a universal issue, not confined to any single type of road user. Road rage is actually something that most of us have experienced at one point or another. In a survey by the AAA, Foundation for Traffic Safety in America, 80% of respondents reported feeling anger behind the wheel of a car in the 30 days prior to the survey. And in a similar survey in the UK by insurance comparison site Compare the Market, 1 in 10 people encountered road rage in the week prior, which is pretty staggering. In that same survey, London was thought to be the rage capital of the UK, with 75% of people reporting feeling angry when they're driving. So, to find out just what is going on and why our roads are such a powder keg, I caught up with Ryan Martin, aka the Anger Professor. Dr. Ryan Martin studies why people get angry and how to use that anger more productively. With a doctorate in counselling psychology, he's perfectly placed to explain what's fueling our road rage. So what is anger, first and foremost, then, in your expert opinion?
Anger is an emotion, and it's the emotional desire to lash out in response to injustice, in response to poor treatment, or in response to goal blocking. And that third one is actually probably most relevant to road rage.
What do you think it is about roads that gets people so angry?
Yeah, so if you were to design essentially a perfect scenario for creating anger, that thing you design would look a lot like driving. It is in many ways just the perfect example of things coming together that lead to anger. So for starters, you are on your way someplace. So what happens is you encounter all of these potential barriers or frustrations that slow you down in meeting that goal, right? Well, that happens all the time on the road. Red lights, slow drivers, traffic, bad weather, all of these things that kind of interfere in your goals. So right there, we encounter a lot of stimuli that lead to anger. Final thing is we've got all of these kind of anonymous others on the road with us, right? All of these people that we don't know. And because we don't know them, we don't know their motivations, we don't know who they are, we don't know if they're dumb or if they're smart, we don't know if they're kind or if they're mean. And that means that we can assign whatever labels we want to them. We can decide they're total idiots. We can decide they're fools. We can decide they did something on purpose. And that lack of understanding of the other people makes us more likely to get angry and more likely to assign a negative assumption about who they are and what's going on.
The sort of riding that I do is fairly quiet. It's on quieter country roads. Every now and again, I'll encounter a busier road, and maybe I'd look to avoid that in the future because I can. But for a lot of people riding in capital cities, very busy cities, it's impossible to find quieter routes. Traffic is high. There's a lot of people on the road. So I'm really interested to find out, in this case, does road rage, increase? Is it a day-to-day issue rather than something you experience every now and again, very rarely? Studies reveal that urban areas experience significantly higher instances of road rage compared to suburban and rural regions.
Oh my gosh.
Research conducted by the Institute of Traffic Studies in 2023 found that cities like New York, Tokyo and London report up to 60% more road rage incidents than their suburban counterparts.
You're a sucker, that's what you are. Why don't you die? Why don't you die?
So, why are cities hotspots for road rage? The answer lies in the sheer density of people and vehicles. More traffic confined to smaller spaces leads to frequent congestion, long commutes, and increased stress levels. Tight parking spaces, limited bike lanes, and constant interactions between diverse road users amplify tensions, making conflicts more likely to escalate. Jeremy Vine is a journalist and daily bike commuter in London who documents his encounters on the road. His videos showcase the driving behaviours he faces every day, providing a real-world glimpse into the challenges cyclists endure in a bustling city environment.
Why do I cycle? Look around. This is the way to travel. This driver will think that I'm holding him up. And so he's going to want to get past me, and he's got quite a fast... Oh, he's fine, he's good. He's good. But drivers do feel that the cyclist in their life is the problem. They get so angry when I'm ahead of them because they wrongly think that if I wasn't there, they'd get there in time. They ignore the fact they got lights. Any driver who passes me is going to have to stop in 100 yards. And I think this is why my films have had more than 100 million views, is because suddenly people can they could see it from the other side, what it's like to be pushed and pushed by the driver behind.
Don't assault me. You've already assaulted me. Are you going to hit me?
Jeremy's encounters with aggressive motorists highlight how these systemic issues create a volatile environment where road rage can easily ignite. To understand these frustrations myself, I headed out to my local city of Bath in the UK to ask some drivers what their thoughts on driving in cities are like. How do you feel when you see like a cyclist nip up the inside?
Oh, they wind me up. They wind me up because they take so much of the room in. They go like two abreast, and it's really annoying. They just sort of get in the lanes and cut you up, and then you've got to suddenly brake. And if I have a cyclist come in, I've got to slam my brakes on. Do you know what I mean? If I'm not quick enough on that reaction, then I could knock one off, and it's just not practical.
If you did hit a cyclist, it might scratch or dent your car, but if you hit a cyclist, it's like potentially a life-changing injury.
Nobody wants to hit a cyclist. Nobody ever wants that, and it would be absolutely devastating on you because you'd feel guilty. I'd feel absolutely guilty. It's nothing that we'd ever want to do. So I mean, so we've got to be really cautious. And when you see like loads of cyclists, especially for a new driver, and there's a busy road with other cars coming, it's a lot to try and deal with at once. And then if, you know, it's not safe and it's hard, isn't it? I don't know what the answer is.
Not everyone wants on a push bike, but there's a lot of people that don't think they need to abide by the same rules on the road, so like red lights, zebra crossings, things like that. So they'll go straight through them, which causes issues, and then which causes a bit of road rage.
Do you think there'd be less conflict if more bike lanes were added, so there wasn't this issue of everyone trying to share the same space?
If someone who's on a push bike has got a set lane to be in, then it makes it easier for both parts. We're not fighting over the road then because they've got their own space to be in. So I think more bike lanes would help, as long as it doesn't then impact people which are driving vehicles, because as we all know, we get up in roars now and then.
Like, England's roads are very tiny, so trying to have cyclists and cars sharing the road, it is difficult.
Yeah.
What about just like everyone slowing down, like reducing the speed limits?
We've already got loads of 20 mile hours.
We don't need any
How
more
slow
20
do we
miles.
have to go,
I could run faster or cycle faster than the 20 mile an hour.
We go so slow as it is.
I do think a common theme when I've spoken to different people creating this is that traffic and congestion on the roads is kind of like one of those root causes as to why everyone is getting so frustrated. And if you look at the US alone, 34 hours is the average time that each commuter is stuck in traffic. And as a whole, the nation spends $70 billion US just because of congestion. And if you look at Europe, the average occupancy per journey is 1.6 people. Everyone's driving everywhere and taking up all this space. It just doesn't add up. So it's obvious why there's so much traffic. And if you look at a 3-metre wide road, that can accommodate 6,500 people by bike per hour, only 1,100 people by car, if each car is filled to capacity. It's less if it's just 1 or 2 people in each vehicle. So it's no wonder then that there is a push to get people out of their cars and onto a bike. It is going to help ease this congestion. I also found that the European Commission's Institute for the Study of Civil Society found that in New York, journey times actually decreased for everyone after a bike lane was installed on a major midtown thoroughway. There, the journey time decreased from 4.5 minutes to 3 minutes for cars because a bike lane was installed. I think if you just look at all the evidence everywhere, it's all pointing to the fact that if you can encourage people to get out of their car and onto a bike, things are going to improve. Congestion is going to decrease. And we're all going to be potentially less frustrated as a result. So if the evidence is clear, why are we seeing so much of a pushback?
The premier who runs our province, a state basically, has come in and said he doesn't like bike lanes, so he's going to rip them out. He says that all the congestion that our major urban centers are facing has to do with bike lanes that are put in, when we know the opposite is true.
This is Dave Shelnut, aka the biking lawyer, who represents victims of injuries and accidents. He has seen this firsthand in his home of Toronto, where politics is leading to bike lanes potentially getting ripped up to the tune of over $38 million, and an increase in violent and deadly incidents on the roads.
We've had 6 people die in Toronto alone this year, not to mention other people across the province. But that never comes up in conversation. That's not something the Premier cares about. It's only just stoking flames of this culture war.
How do you see that friction, like in real terms? What are the sort of stories you're hearing of like road rage incidents or negativity towards cyclists? How serious is it getting?
Yeah, I would say minor incidents of like, hey, you cut me off, turns into a vehicle being weaponized and people being run over. We see motorists jumping out of their car to threaten cyclists with their fists, all for very minor things. That this kind of behavior on the street, if you threaten someone with a knife, you would be locked up for that. But on a roadway, you can swerve into somebody or even hit them and you get a slap on the wrist in Ontario. And that's what we should be looking at. That's the kind of law changes that we need here, is like protecting vulnerable road users and making sure that if you do something very dangerous with your motor vehicle, like assault somebody, it's treated very seriously. But instead, his bills are to rip out bike lanes.
Hey. Oh my gosh.
Statistics show time and again that increasing cycling infrastructure like bike lanes and physical barriers separating cyclists from vehicles does create a safer space and less congestion for all road users. Helping reduce conflicts and leading to more peaceful roads and promoting courteous behaviour between drivers and cyclists. Now that I've explored the causes of road rage and seen its impact firsthand, I decided to revisit my own confrontation video. With the insights I've gained, can I better understand all the emotions and factors at play? It's really hard to watch. It's really hard to watch, actually. Also, just hearing again what the person was saying. Like, basically said he'd have been happy to wipe us off the road, which is quite a big statement to make of someone who's just out on a bike ride.
Get in that car and think, I just took another off the road after.
Wow. I find it hard to watch because I kind of feel embarrassed because I was drawn into it and I really lost my temper too. I think I'm really nervous sharing that clip because essentially you are just seeing a tiny snapshot of that incident, and I feel that if you just watch that, I look as bad as the other guy, I look as bad as the motorist really. Like we're both shouting, there's physical confrontation for both of us, and I'm basically reinforcing I'm not doing cyclists in general a good service. But take that all in context, I do still feel I was justified to behave like that. That's the thing, because what else was I going to do? A guy literally drove his car at me, jumped out of his car and ran at me, and I did not do anything to provoke it. I was literally just riding on the road with my mate. And then suddenly I'm having a massive argument in the middle of the road with like full audience. So yeah, I'd rather forget it. I began this film investigating anger and determining if road rage is worsening. Watching clips like this, it's hard to believe things are improving. For real change, our cities must adapt to the growing number of non-motorists. That's why I'm meeting Saskia Hayiltis, Bath's first bicycle mayor and regional organiser of Critical Mass, a global group advocating for safer cycling infrastructure. I started by asking Saskia what Critical Mass actually is.
It is a way to celebrate cycling, but to also call for safer streets. So it's a family-friendly cycle ride where you basically take up the whole lane and you just go around as a group with people of all ages and abilities. And yeah, it's a way to show other people like how it could be.
Critical Mass hosts events all over the world. Their aim and tagline is space for the next generation. They create a safer space for children to ride bikes while promoting the need for cycling infrastructure. I asked Saskia why this is an important message to send.
When you don't see people cycling, you don't get used to that. So I think the more people get used to people cycling on the road, the more people will just take it in their stride and understand how that is not adding to congestion, but actually alleviating congestion. So it's better for everyone.
In making this film, I've spoken with drivers who say that adding more bike lanes and taking space away from vehicles has made them more stressed behind the wheel. Since stress can lead to road rage, I asked Saskia if she believes anger on our roads is increasing.
I definitely do not feel this, actually the other way around. My experience has not gotten worse. I think online you see a lot of very negative voices. I think on the streets I am only experiencing a more positive riding experience, so I think it's actually helping. Yeah, I think people are more aware of the issues, people are more aware of the climate emergency, of the health crisis. So I think people understand that we need to do something. And so yeah, I'm seeing it as I think we're going into the right direction in terms of people's opinions.
It's clear that Critical Mass and other organisations are making significant strides in changing drivers' perceptions. So there are green shoots of hope here. But it's worth pointing out that Saskia's experience is a microcosm of a much wider issue. We now know what causes anger and what we can do to curtail it. Seen horrific examples of road rage on our streets and heard firsthand about the culture wars being sparked between cyclists and motorists in Toronto. But how do I feel now at the end of this journey? I started this film looking to examine if road rage was a growing issue, and at the end, personally I think it is. I think everyone's busier, everyone's trying to get to places faster, and that is leading to more issues of conflict. But at the same time, I also think there's a lot of hope. I think roads are being managed better, infrastructure is coming in to allow everyone to share these spaces in a better way. But I still think not all road rage is equal. If a cyclist lashes out at a motorist, it's going to cause a lot less harm than a motorist lashing out at a cyclist, and I still don't think you can get away from that. A lot more harm can be created when a motorist loses their temper and basically drives their car like a weapon, and we are seeing how that is happening around the world. And I do think you need to protect the vulnerable road user, and that needs to come in everywhere. We're seeing it happening, but it needs to happen more. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you encountered road rage, is it an issue where you ride or where you live or where you drive? Be really interested to hear what you think. It's been an eye-opening journey making this film for me. Thanks for watching. Keep calm out there.
What's your problem?
There's a whole heap of traffic down here. There's no cars down here.
You're going...
You go, get on.
Touch me again, I'll smack you.
Oh, you're going to smack me?
London-based YouTuber Cycling Mikey has made a name for himself for personally filming and reporting dangerous driving.
Do you have anything else to say?
No, tell it to the magistrate.
Fine.
His footage has led to over 2,000 prosecutions. How does he do it? By filming his daily rides to work and uploading any evidence of witnessed offences to the police and his YouTube channel.
You like to be on camera now, Mikey?
I don't mind.
Yeah, we'll put your face all over the internet now.
Why are you shaking?
Yeah, because you're
To some, he is a hero, highlighting issues of road safety. To others, he is only making things worse, creating a dangerous divide between cyclists and motorists. What is the man behind the camera really like though? And are his methods justified? I'm spending the day with him to find out. Mike Van Erp's YouTube channel, Cycling Mikey, has over 110,000 subscribers, and some of his 2,000 plus videos have gained millions of views, with footage simultaneously being submitted to the police as evidence. It's fair to say he has made a name for himself from this, even catching the likes of Chris Eubank and Guy Ritchie, and has made numerous high-profile media appearances. As I make my way to meet him in central London, I can't help but feel apprehension. 1 in 6 drivers use a dash cam, but do I really agree with Mike's methods? Or does it just stir up more negativity towards cyclists in general? Hey Mike.
Good morning, Connor.
Sorry,
what an honour to meet you.
No, you too, man. You too. Thanks for having me.
I wasn't expecting you to be that tall.
Everyone says that. Everyone says that. But thanks for having me, and thanks for taking me for a ride around your city.
Thank you.
It's like just riding here. I forgot how busy it is, and it was a bit to get used to.
It's a different world to like country lanes and road cycling.
That is it. But let's get a coffee. What are we doing? Like I know when I spoke to you on the phone before we came, and essentially we're riding with cameras on our bikes, but like, how does that work? Is there a tactic? What's your like golden kind of protocol?
So generally, what I'm doing is I'm just riding places to do my usual stuff, my commuting, my errands, my leisure rides. And then while I'm doing that, I just keep an eye on road users around me. And if I see someone on the phone, then I'll press the highlight button on the GoPro so I can find that moment back. Because no one wants to watch hours of riding around. That's like horrible waste of time stuff. And that just means when I get home, I can grab that little clip, trim it out and upload and report it to the police.
This is where I am a bit nervous about today. I've seen some of the confrontation in your videos and some of the aggression.
Trying to turn right. What's the problem?
What is your problem?
There's a whole heap of traffic down
Get
there.
off.
There's no cars down here.
You're going...
Don't get on.
Touch me again, I'll smack you.
From other road users. So should I be nervous going out with you?
So I would say no. I try never to initiate confrontation. I'll talk to people. I'll generally be polite and kind. But of course, some people will go so far as to kick off. Mostly it'll be posturing.
Posturing? I'm not very good at posturing, Mike. Well, I look big, that's the thing, so that's a deterrent, but
that racing whippet look is not very intimidating unless you're a cyclist and you're racing.
I'm not intimidated. I don't think I look intimidating. Coffee's finished. It's time to head out on the bikes. I must admit, I'm nervous. First, though, I'll be following Mike's lead. Do you enjoy riding in London?
I do like riding in London. Yes, the traffic is more pressure on you, but it's still less dangerous in country lanes. You're more likely to have a minor collision going by the stats, but you're less likely to die in London. Interesting how heavy traffic changes the dynamic of traffic collisions, right? But I like London because it's got this amazing buzz and energy.
What is the number one, thing people are doing
on the
in terms
roads?
of breaking the law and
phone use? I think
phone use is it,
and speeding.
So what's the top 3? Phone use, speeding.
I can't do anything about the speeding again because I'm not a speed camera. And going through red lights, which is quite common amongst drivers. Here we go. Go to green.
Right. Underway. Following Mike. I feel a bit out of my comfort zone. Let's get ahead of me. I better catch him up. Mike is a dab hand at this. He kind of knows how to filter the traffic, and he's just looking at every car. So Mike's just going ahead. He said this is normally a good spot at lights where there's a big queue to try and catch someone. So I'm just giving him a bit of space and then I'll mosey up to him. He's a good bike handler. like a jackrabbit. He's off to the front already. Oh, we'll catch him up. How am I feeling about this ride so far? I must admit, it feels weird, riding and deliberately looking into people's car windows. Following Mike, I can't decide how I feel about it, and so far we haven't found anyone actually breaking the rules. However, it's a case of carrying on riding and following Mike.
You can't catch everyone, right? It's just not practical. There's a lady on the phone and she's typing, stopping. So I may end up doing something like this. So I've seen several keystrokes on her, she's swiping upwards. It's a phone in a wallet case, and I can see the screen is lit up with a charging cable plugged in. She is wearing a seatbelt, and I saw that it was the 3 generations ago iPhone with a notch in it. Good morning, ma'am. At your map, I'm afraid it's not allowed though, even in the queue. It has to be dash mounted. You're not allowed to hold and use it like that. Also, when I saw the lit up screen, I don't think you were using maps. You have about 2 weeks now before the police may write a letter to you and choosing whether they intend to prosecute you or not. But that's up to them. Sorry? They may offer you a fixed penalty notice, they may leave it alone, or they may take you to court. It's not down to me. Can't use your phone, ma'am, I'm sorry. The fixing would allow you, yes, definitely. That's all right. Thanks for being so polite and kind. I hope your day goes better. No problem. Yeah, have a look at the highway code when you get home and you'll see it's... Anyway, I wish you a better day than that it was just this minute. All right. Bye. Yeah, well, what a lovely lady, right? These are the best interactions. She was so nice, so polite, no aggression towards me. And, you know, you feel a little bit bad when you catch somebody like that. But she's going to keep doing it if we don't do anything about it. So I'll hit the highlight button now, which will let me find this spot.
I mean, you were straight away, you saw it, just turned around.
There was another one here somewhere, but...
There was a few. It's a long traffic jam, so kind of close to Battersea.
Well, some of them were not on phones at all, but there was one who looked like she might have been on the phone, but I was just passed her a bit too quickly.
Do you think the roads have got safer since you've started filming? You've got, I mean, in this ride, you've been recognised so much. You're known at these roads. People know what you're trying to do. Do you think the roads have got safer?
Almost all over the UK, I get that.
Yeah.
So I think that
really?
the stats in London is that it has recently got safer. I couldn't attribute that to myself. I mean, maybe I've had an effect, but I think collectively, the vast number of journey cam users, because that's what the police now want to use, is journey cam, meaning covering dash cams and head cams and everything else.
Yeah.
They are having an effect. And I'm sure that collectively everybody has saved some lives.
Is mobile phone use really that dangerous, though? I do find myself asking this whilst riding around looking for infringements. Road safety, though, is sadly a huge issue in the UK, like many countries. In 2023 alone, 29,711 people were killed or seriously injured on Britain's roads. Between 2014 and 19, an average of 1 major incident every 3 days was linked to distracted driving. It's also thought that 13% of these incidents resulted in fatalities. According to road safety charity Brake, using a phone behind the wheel makes you 4 times more likely to be in a crash. Then, looking at reaction times, when using hands-free phones, it's thought you are 30% slower than the reaction times at the drink drive limit. If you're driving at 55 miles per hour, when you look at your phone for 5 seconds, you'll have travelled an entire football field length. Moving or stationary, when you take your eyes off the road, it's thought it can take up to 27 seconds for your eyes to reorientate to the road for the mental distraction to end. When you take all that into account, you can see why the police take this so seriously. Whilst we continue riding, it's got to be said it's actually not just cyclists using onboard cameras. Since 2015, insurers here in the UK now accept footage in claims, and you're able to report driving to the police from such methods. This is actively encouraged via a police operation named Operation Snap, and over 200,000 uploads have been sent to the police since 2021 as a result. And in some police forces, over half of footage received comes from motorists. There are around 2.4 million road offences committed here every year, and the police are looking at new ways to combat this. As well as self-reporting, AI speed cameras have been trialled that detect phone use amongst other infringements such as seatbelt use. Mikey is most definitely not alone. Do you have a knowledge of the law? Are you confident?
Some limited areas of the law, and you'd think something like mobile phone use is very, very simple, right? Either you're using it or you're not. But actually the number of wrinkles and slightly different situations that might place a person guilty or not guilty is remarkably complex.
Okay.
So I think I've got a bit of a handle on mobile phone law, but I'm no lawyer. I caught one of this company's drivers a couple of months ago.
Really?
And I tweeted at them, and they said, "Yeah, we've confirmed it on the cab cams," and the police prosecuted.
Really?
It was definitely not this driver, though.
So he'd have lost his job, I imagine. Probably. Must have done.
I think that's probably the right choice, though, in a lorry, right?
100%. After watching Mike all morning, we stop for lunch and I gather my thoughts. But as we head back out onto London's streets, it's my turn to switch on the helmet cam. I've said over lunch that I feel like it's time for me to take the reins a bit. I've picked up enough on how to do it now. I've been watching you, so it is quite full on. Like, you know, like
that's amazing to hear such an experienced professional cyclist like yourself say something like that.
I'm tired after the morning. It's so much concentration and being aware of yourself, and also I think being out of my comfort zone, going right up to windows of cars. But I'm ready for it. You're coming with me, which makes me feel more confident. So Mike, you've got like millions of views on some of your videos. Did you ever expect that to happen and these videos to go as viral as they have done?
No, I had no idea. I've never done this for the fame and the publicity. Sure, I'm using it now that it's there. But I don't even quite understand why people like watching this stuff, because to me, particularly the more viewed ones are often a bit confrontational. I don't really like that. I don't want that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, why do you think so many people watch the videos?
I struggle to watch them back because it's like remembering someone behaving really badly towards me in like perfect 4K detail, and it's not that great.
It must be hard to kind of watch it back.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I can do it obviously to do the reports. So I still don't really understand why people like watching that.
Yeah,
I guess I have a different personality to many of the people who like it.
I mean, it's obvious that you've made such a name for yourself from these videos. I mean, we've seen it today. The amount of times you've been recognised is incredible.
I always say to my partner, stay off your phone. One of these days, cycle with Mike is going to get you. Can we get a selfie?
Yes, of course we can.
Yeah. Yay.
Thank you.
Emer.
Mike.
Lovely to meet you. Keep up the good work, because I know obviously you're a dad and everything.
Oh, thank you.
Do you feel like, because I obviously film bikes every day, a different way to you, but every day. Is there like a pressure to keep filming?
I do feel now the YouTube side of things where there's pressure to release every day. I feel a bit more of that. And it's less important to me maybe than the pressure of reporting regularly. I feel like I should always report.
Yeah.
Equally, if I'm not in the mood, or I'm like the last couple of days this week, I worked from home, I didn't go out, I didn't feel too bad not reporting anything.
Yeah. I mean, I see the benefit of how you can raise awareness and the benefits of having a camera on your bike and having the power to report a driver. But do you see how that might be what antagonises some people, how you're reporting, but you're also publicising?
Well, I think it's really important to show justice being served, to show what's happening on the roads.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of things. I want people to see that there are consequences, that you can be caught in literally 3 or 4 seconds of turning up next to someone's car. To teach people that it's easy to report, so other people go out and report.
Yeah.
And last of all, to make the public aware that actually there's lots of people doing this, not just me.
Yeah.
So I'm using that publicity to achieve all that.
For sure.
And I feel duty bound to come and deal with media like you guys so that you'll also promote it and get other people reporting. That's my keen. I don't want to be the only one doing this.
Yeah. Well, you're not the only one today.
No.
The camera's on the helmet. These are pretty sticky mounts. I'm still nervous about going up to someone's windscreen. I'm still nervous, it's like I'm seeing it and being like, I don't know what do I say? What do I say, Mike?
You don't have to say anything.
No?
You could just be kind and say, oh, good afternoon, how are you?
You're on your phone?
You don't even have to say that if you don't want to. You can totally just disarm them by being your kind, nice and pleasant
I feel
self.
I have to say something. I feel I have to say, I'm sorry, you're on your phone, I'm filming. You know, like you do. Yeah, you're very good at the chat.
Yeah, maybe because I've done it lots.
Okay, I'm a bit nervous, but let's head out, take it easy, and...
You could even deny that you're filming them. You just sort of... I thought there was an interesting picture on your phone.
It's quite hard to deny I'm filming anything.
No, well, if they ask, you just say, no, I'm just in case there's a crash.
Okay.
There's no... You know, it wouldn't affect a court case. If you lie while you're filming to keep yourself safe, that's not being dishonest.
Okay.
It's just keeping yourself safe. I wouldn't see any problem with that.
How's my view?
It's pretty good. If you straighten up when you're riding, I guess it's a bit more... You might be a bit too down like that. So you might want to go... ish there-ish.
George Giraffe is ready for business.
It's a very good name for you.
George Giraffe and Papa Smurf. We're hitting the road. She was holding it.
Because it's in the left hand, I would suggest going on the offside.
So...
Otherwise you won't see the screen.
What's the offside? The left hand?
Yeah.
Left hand side. On the phone. You can't use a phone in the car. I mean, I said.
Yes.
I wasn't very confident, was I?
No, you were.
I was I? So what is that?
So I could actually see the lit-up screen and the scrolling through the back window.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, they're wearing a seatbelt. Luxury cars of any type the drivers are 3 to 4 times more likely to break the law.
Thanks for that, Mike.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you. So...
It's not something that's hard to do. It just takes a bit of thinking about.
Yeah, so we've ridden, what, it's like 5 kilometres, 3 kilometres if that. Up and down. Where are we again?
It's King's Road, I think.
King's Road. I have no idea where we are in London, but it's busy.
I'm using Google so much, I'm not great with where I'm
Yeah. 2 drivers I caught on the camera. I mean, we need to look back at the footage to see if it's actually there. The first driver I confronted.
So that was a male in a blue Porsche, I should say.
Yeah, and I just put the camera at the window and I said, "You're on your phone. You can't be on your phone." And it immediately apologised, put the phone down, but it was clearly on camera. It feels weird to put your camera up into the window. It still feels like you're going into someone's space.
Yeah, it does a little bit. I understand that feeling, but equally, it's not pushing the law in any way. You're quite legal doing that, but I also get that feeling that people feel that it's their personal space, but wrongly don't realise that your car is in public view, so anyone can film it.
Do you feel sorry for people when they're getting prosecuted, or do you have second thoughts about...
I very rarely have second thoughts about reporting people. Once I dealt with that taxi driver who begged for me not to report him, and who, thank you, and who then said he would commit suicide, which was just blatant emotional manipulation. What I did is I really thought about whether I should report him or not.
Yeah.
And in the end, having spoken to a bunch of traffic officers, the answer is just report him straight up.
Really?
And that's because The traffic officer all said no, he's just acting that out to try and guilt you into not reporting him. And he'll just do it again if you don't. So no, I try not to distinguish anyone. I just report everyone without fear or favour and let the police decide.
Mike, thanks so much for taking me out.
It's been a real honour
London.
riding with you.
Yeah, it's been an eye-opener, and it's been also really nice to meet you too. You're such a nice guy.
Oh, thank you. Likewise.
And it's been a real kind of pleasure just to ride around your city with you. I guess I'm just thinking. I know we spoke about it, how you attract criticism from some people, and why do you think you attract so much criticism?
So I think there's a bunch of factors behind that. One of which is that how dare a cyclist lay down the law over drivers? I'm not laying down the law, but that's how some people see it, right? A cyclist doesn't pay road tax, doesn't have insurance, doesn't. You see where I'm going with this?
The classic arguments.
All those classic anti-cyclist arguments. But really, I'm just another road user. It doesn't really matter whether I'm a cyclist. I've done it on my skates, I've done it on foot, but mostly it's on my bike when I'm travelling.
Do you think it's the way you catch people out? Like, it is sneaky, like you have to be sneaky to do it.
True.
Do you think it's part of that?
Like, I know a lot of people complained about me hiding in the hedge at Gandalf Corner. I'm like, well, if I'm not behind the hedge, you're not going to go on the wrong side of the road. And where I'm standing anyway is exactly on the blind sight line of the traffic coming the other way. So I don't know what to say. You have to, if you want the evidence, you have to do certain things to get that evidence. The police are even more sneaky. They hide well down the road where you'll never see them.
Do you think you've maybe gone too far in some of your videos? You know, the times when you've stood in the road and stopped cars and made them go back. Like, do you think maybe you could have just filmed that from the pavement?
So I think that's a fair question. So I think I could be safer for myself by not stopping them and just staying on the pavements. But as we know, the police have now decriminalised that. So they'll just go through, and unless they affect some other traffic really quite negatively, they won't even be charged. But I think it's important to stop people from doing that, just because it's that real shock that, like, you did something wrong and you're not going to get away with it.
So this, I know you don't like the term vigilante.
Yes.
But this is where I'd say you would cross into vigilantism, because you're standing in the road and you're telling someone to go back.
But it's not really a punishment. Or suppose it's a loss of ego. Maybe that is a punishment. But their legal route is always clear through the road. They'll never stop them from driving the way they should drive.
But why I'd say it's vigilantism is because
I've taken an action on them.
And you've also crossed the line into standing in the road, and all it takes is for them to put their foot on the accelerator and injure you. Yeah. So that you're putting yourself in harm's way there.
True, but I'm not putting other people in danger. And what I'm doing is a little bit like taking the keys from a drink driver and not letting them drive. It's not the same, but it's stopping the immediate danger as opposed to people coming the other way. If I was really being a vigilante, I would probably throw my bike on the car and scratch up their car or something, or grab their phone and throw it away and we'll smash it.
I still feel like when I'm filming, you're like, we're going down the line of traffic and we're looking for the driver, it feels like I'm enforcing the law. Like that, I'm saying that's against the law. Don't look at your phone.
So you're making an initial filter. There's some truth in that. You're filtering what you think is right and wrong, but you never get the chance. You're not actually making the decision on when anything goes ahead.
Yeah, I get you.
Because that goes to the police.
I get you.
And even the police are not. They make their judgment based on because they do so many of these cases. They probably know what's right.
Yeah.
The final judgment either comes to the driver admitting they're guilty via FPN, or them going to court and arguing it in front of the magistrates.
Yeah.
You see? So they are the ones...
Okay, you're winning me rounds. Okay, Mark.
So it's not quite enforcement.
Yeah.
It's more like just saying that's not right, and I think it should be dealt with.
I can't help liking Mikey. He's just a warm, happy, friendly guy, which is maybe a contrast to what I was expecting. And you see that on the streets of London. He is so well known, and perhaps my biggest surprise of the day is the general positivity people feel towards him. Roads do feel calmer here than I remember. People are aware of others, and I'd say aware that their every action could be filmed and reported, either by Mike, police cameras, or the many other road users now filming with journey cams. Of course, there will always be some who find this annoying, and personally, I do find Mike's methods pretty extreme. But at the same time, shouldn't it be annoying to be caught breaking the rules? And shouldn't the consequences be tough? Because when you use a road, you're responsible for your own safety, but also the safety of others. We all know this. And isn't it worth being constantly reminded of it, and constantly reminded and kept on our toes when it comes to this, so that we can all strive to be better, safer road users? I think so. I do also see, though, why Mike will continue to stir debate and divide opinion. But as a society, isn't it important to do this? To try and bring these issues to attention so we can find better ways and methods to make everyone safer? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, where I'm sure this debate will continue. Just don't do it while you're driving.
Over the last 100 years, the world has been brainwashed. In this video, I'm going to explain how. Who do you think poses a greater risk to your safety as a pedestrian, cars or bikes?
Bikes. Bikes.
Bikes, I think.
Oh, I think bikes.
And what if I said that cars kill 500 pedestrians a year and bikes kill 2?
I would say that those cars are often killing people because bikes are forcing them over the middle of the road and causing problems.
I flagged down a whole load of people, and more than half said exactly that. Why? Why are we blind? Not just to that statistic, but all of the others that show that driving is a huge public health hazard. And if you found that slightly triggering, you've been brainwashed too. In this video, I'm going to speak to a leading psychologist who has been researching this subject.
It's that even people who don't drive are excusing people who drive and downplaying the harms of motoring because it looks like we've just all taken on board the message, and it's hardly surprising.
As well as speaking to a politician, the former Transport Minister for Wales, who put into place a policy that seemingly challenged our endemic car culture.
And the evidence is very, very clear about this. This is not up for debate. Reduces the number of deaths, reduces the number of casualties, but also critically changes the feel of a neighbourhood.
It is not an exaggeration to say that driving is causing a public health hazard of epic proportions. We're not just talking about crashes and collisions which kill and injure. In the UK alone, there are 40,000 premature deaths per year as a result of pollution from cars. And let's not even get started on the countless more premature deaths that result from inactivity fostered by our culture of driving everywhere. And yet, we don't even notice. Our lives are enslaved to cars, but most of us just want more. Why? Motonormativity. That's why. I'm on my way to Swansea in Wales to meet Professor Ian Walker. He's the head of psychology at the university there. He coined the term motonormativity in a piece of research whose findings kind of blew my mind. Ian, firstly, can you talk me through what you actually found out in this research?
Yes, we took over 2,000 people around the country, randomly gave them either a set of questions about driving or the same set of questions with a couple of words changed, so it wasn't about driving, and we found that the responses became completely different. If you asked the same principle but mentioned cars, then people would go, oh yeah, that's completely fine. And if you asked the same principle but didn't mention cars, people would go, no, that's completely wrong. So it really seemed like the mention of motoring changed the values that people were applying to the situation.
For example, 87% of people disagreed with the statement that if you leave your car in the street and it gets stolen, it's your fault and the police shouldn't act. However, only 37% of people disagreed if it was your belongings that were stolen. Now, people also felt that while the risks associated with driving were acceptable, risks while working were not. But perhaps the most telling of all was that while 75% of people agreed that you shouldn't smoke in highly populated areas if people had to breathe in the fumes, only 17% agreed that you shouldn't drive in highly populated areas if people had to breathe the car fumes. Now, dangerous fumes are dangerous fumes. In this case, the harms of both are well documented. But it's striking that the cause of those fumes changes how they are perceived. Clearly, it's okay for people to die for the sake of cars, but not smoking.
We think a big part of this is just because it's so culturally normal. Cars coming first is everywhere around us. Everyone who is alive today has only ever known a world where cars come first. And it's reinforced everywhere you look. Go and look at how streets are designed. They're built so that the car goes first and the pedestrian waits or gets out of the way. Go and look at the media reporting of traffic incidents where someone crashes their car, and look how the media report it as an accident, an act of God, something that nobody could have prevented. Look at how cars are advertised with speed and power and control and messages of status. All of the various things around us, including the other people that you see every single day when you go out in the street, all of these messages reinforce in the same direction. They all say, cars come first, driving is important, driving is number one. The harms of driving are something we shouldn't think about.
And so now we've got to a point where no one is actively sort of maliciously maybe portraying this message. It is just unconscious. We just all accept that the car is king.
It looks like it. I mean, one of the things that really jumped out to us when we did our survey work, and this has been repeated by other researchers since, is that people who don't drive tend to respond more or less the same. So it's not even like people are just excusing themselves unconsciously. It's that even people who don't drive are excusing people who drive and downplaying the harms of motoring, because it looks like we've just all taken on board the message, and it's hardly surprising given how much that message is driven home to us through lots of different channels.
And presumably as well, you asked questions where you knew that you were going to get these kind of responses, so you were kind of deliberately provoking.
Yeah, but there's a difference between asking a question where you think you know what the answer is going to be and stacking the deck. The way we think of it is we set up questions in a way so that if there were biases out there, which we thought there would be, then they'd have a chance to show themselves. Interestingly, when other people have repeated our experiment recently, they added extra situations. So they added, for example, is it okay to play loud music in public where it disturbs other people? And that got treated the same as smoking. And it was still the car that was the odd one out. So yes, we set things up to find an effect, but it was only there because the effect was so strong and ready to be found.
Professor Walker wanted to show us examples both of the outcomes of this motonormativity, but also how our built environments are part of the problem in the first place. It's not our fault that we think the car is king, because this message is reinforced to us countless times a day.
There's a good example, a sign for the people driving past, but look where the space is taken from. Space comes from pedestrians for the needs of the driver, and probably no one even noticed there was going to be a complication from this.
Well, yeah, because you would never put a sign in a road, would you? Because people need to drive past it, right?
People need to walk past it. Yeah. And this isn't the worst stuff. So you'll see a lot of like this where you couldn't possibly get a wheelchair past it or a pushchair. So here's another interesting example of these sort of typical flared bell-mouthed roads. Okay. So this is a little residential road, and you'd think it would be a T-junction. You'd think a T-junction would be a T like that at right angles, but they're never at right angles. They always have these big flared entrances and exits. The main reason being so that vehicles don't have to slow down as they come in and out of the junction.
Okay.
Now, that might make sense if you're driving a vehicle, you don't want to slow down, but it makes a lot less sense if you're a pedestrian, and especially looking at the tactile pavement here for blind people or visually impaired people, if you're visually impaired. Because we're being told to cross here. Not only is the road twice as wide as it needs to be, but it's twice as wide and intended that vehicles will be going faster.
Yeah.
So it's increasing the danger to pedestrians for the convenience of motorists
And I suspect no one's noticed this. Every day people will walk up in here or drive around here, and the person walking every day is given a little bit of friction, a little bit of danger every day. The person driving every day is given a little bit of smooth and ease and convenience. And you might have 20, 30, 40, 50 of these every day. It's no wonder people get the message, please drive, don't walk.
All right then, ready? Here we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 and a bit. That's ridiculous, isn't it? And it's like, it's a quiet residential street, and yet you're funneled around the corner at warp speed.
Here we've got, I need to go there, that person needs to go there, who just by default is given freedom of movement and who has to ask permission and wait.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be this way. Could be the other way around. There could be an induction coil in the road so that this is green by default, but it notices when a car comes and changes after a little pause.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. And it's always the pedestrian, the healthy, active traveller who walks. And it's hard to notice, look, not a lot of healthy, active travellers. Maybe this constant friction, this constant messaging that you're in the way is a part of that.
Yeah.
I think what we need is we need policymakers to be looking around and saying, look, we can't just build the world we had in the past, and we especially can't just build the world we had in the 1960s. We need to build a world, a physical world, and a legal world that is the world we want to see. Because if we shape a world that encompasses what we want to see, that will start to happen. You've got to build it before the behaviour comes.
To me, it seems clear. Once you start to look, it is everywhere. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is on my commute home from work. Pedestrians rerouted into the bike lane, 2 lanes kept open for cars, but the cycling infrastructure is just expendable. I get the rationale of keeping the traffic moving, but that's what makes it worse, prioritising cars over personal safety. I also posted this video to Instagram and felt the full force of car brain in action. To even challenge car culture evidently requires thick skin, but imagine trying to actually do something about it. Back over in Wales, the government there implemented 2 policies, both of which should benefit the country, one of which will directly save lives, but that challenged car culture and caused an uproar. Lee Waters was the Minister for Transport responsible for implementing them.
People will do what is easy. And over 70 years, we've made it the easiest, most convenient way to get around is to jump in a car. We've made other forms of transport cumbersome. We introduced friction. Essentially, we've made it harder. And so people do what is easy. A bunch of things need to come together. You need to change the engineering. You need to change the culture. You need to incentivize the right behaviors. You also need to disincentivize the behaviors that get in the way. Lowering the speed, and the evidence is very, very clear about this. This is not up for debate. Reduces the number of deaths, reduces the number of casualties, but also critically changes the feel of a neighbourhood and allows more social interaction. So when there is less noise and there is less sense of danger, people are more likely to go out and about. They like to talk to their neighbours. They like to allow their children to play in their streets. Their community feels different, and that then encourages and enables a different type of behaviour.
And did the extent of the opposition to that policy surprise you then? Because hearing you talk about it, it makes total sense. It sounds like a really nice thing to implement, but it really triggered seemingly a large proportion of people.
Yeah, well, we knew it was going to be difficult. Every time anybody has introduced a change in the rules of the road, there has been controversy. If you read back to when the Bleacher beacons were introduced in the 1930s, you know, those poles with the orange lights on top, there was uproar. Fast forward to drink driving laws. Barbara Castle in the 60s introduced the breathalyzer. Huge abuse and resistance. So there's this real, we're hitting on culture here. This is not about evidence and facts and rules. This is about how people feel. And we've got to a point in our society where people's feelings around their rights as motorists are not just about rationale and facts. They're about how they feel, they're about their identity, they're about the sense of culture, about their relationship with the state. So that's really complicated.
Now we've had 9 months, I think, since, or 9 months for people to get used to this lower speed limit. What's the perception, do you think, amongst the public now?
Before this came in, we were looking at the example of congestion charging in London when that was first introduced. And there's an academic in Bristol called Phil Goodwin who did some research around that, and he came up with a change curve, which is called the Goodwin curve, which is taken from that congestion charging. And that essentially shows that, sometime out when you're talking about the concept, support for the principle is high. And as you get closer to implementation, that support dips, so the curve goes like that. And then nearest to the point of implementation, it hits rock bottom and during implementation. But then as people get used to it, the curve rises again and support starts to build. And that's what happened in London with congestion charging. And that's what we were anticipating would happen in Wales with 20 mile an hour. And that is what is happening. We'll need to be some time out to get the fulls of wide angle lens view of the trend. My sense is that it's taken longer in Wales and the dip has gone deeper than we anticipated. But we are definitely now starting to come out the other side. And the evidence 9 months in is confirming what we anticipated would happen. And what has happened in London, what's happened in Edinburgh, what's happened in Spain, where this has been done, the impact on casualties and deaths has been consistent.
Is it too early to tell whether or not you're starting to get a shift in people's transport habits as well? Like, are people driving less now?
We need several years of data to be able to properly assess the full impact. But when we can look at London and Edinburgh, for example, which have a number of years of proper data behind this, what we are seeing is that speeds are down without enforcement. So this is a self-regulating in large behaviour. There are fewer deaths and casualties, but also levels of cycling and walking are up, because, as common sense would tell us, people feel it is safer, and if they are involved in a collision, their chances of being seriously hurt are less.
I guess one thing I'd really love is to know whether or not you think there's anything that can be done about motor normativity.
I think one of the things that's probably most promising, and one of the things we're really not doing, is the first step with any problem is to acknowledge there's a problem. And I think we're such a long way from that. When was the last time you heard anything from government saying your short car trips are a problem, your short car trips are creating pollution that your neighbours are having to breathe? When was the last time government sent a strong message saying maybe try and walk a bit more? We don't see these things. We're not recognising that there's even a problem to be solved. And I think until we do that, until we collectively start to realise, until we start getting official messaging to help us realise that there is a problem here that needs to be solved, I don't know if we're going to make huge strides.
And what would be the motive for the government?
There's an obvious motive for governments in the savings that are coming to them. The amount of money that the NHS is losing in this country, or healthcare worldwide, picking up what an economist would call the externalities of motoring, the costs that are hidden from the system. So the healthcare costs of the diabetes, the Alzheimer's, and all of these things that are linked to air pollution, the healthcare costs of the physical inactivity. So there's an immediate billions of dollars financial saving to be made, which should appeal to any government in this day and age. And as part of that, one of the things that maybe governments could get more focused on is, why are people driving in the first place? Very few people are in a car just to drive a car. They're using a car as a means to an end. They're not just driving for its own sake. They're going to the shops, they're going to visit their friends, they're taking children to school, they're getting to work, they're going to hospitals. Now, that's what people are actually trying to do, and the car is just a way that they're doing it. But there's other ways you can do those things, and the government could be making those other ways easier. Like with anything, if you don't recognise there's a problem, you're not going to address it. And you also, if you don't recognise there's a problem, you're not going to respond favourably to interventions that are intended to help.
So, what do we take from all of this then? Well, you know about it now. That is perhaps the most important thing. What you choose to do next is entirely up to you. But just remember, it doesn't have to be this way. There is an alternative to car culture. Now, I'd be really, really interested to know your thoughts on this subject. So get involved in the comment section down below. Did you know that this was a thing prior to watching this video? Has it changed your perspective at all? And should we do anything about it? Like I say, get involved. Very, very interested to hear your thoughts. And also, please give this video a like as well if you've enjoyed this type of content. Let us know so we can make more. There is a fundamental issue with roads and traffic that is being ignored at huge cost. Environmentally, socially, and also economically. Yes, this issue is costing us billions, and it's because the basic principle that shapes our roads and therefore our towns and cities and landscapes as well is dated and flawed. So what on earth has been going on that's meant that we have wasted billions, perhaps trillions globally on junk roads? In this video, I'm going to explain. But I will warn you now, though, once you start to peer down this rabbit hole, once you see this, you will not be able to look at the world the same way again.
Why are freeways being widened when all the evidence points to that only making traffic worse? Why does the USA effectively subsidise parking to the tune of $500 billion a year? And what would happen if we did things differently? To make sense of it all, I've been talking to some of the leading minds in this field, industry veterans, academics, and politicians. Traffic congestion is a major source of frustration. Drivers in the world's most congested cities can lose up to 100 hours a year sat in traffic. I hate traffic! And if that's not depressing enough, there's apparently a huge economic cost to this as well. Estimates show that the UK might lose up to £7.5 billion a year through traffic congestion. In China, $34 billion, and in America, $80 billion per year from traffic. And what about the knock-on effects? CO2, NO2, noise, particulate emissions that are responsible for thousands and thousands of premature deaths per year in the world's most congested cities. So what's the answer? Build more roads, make traffic move freely. That makes sense, doesn't it? Roads clearly need greater capacity. More roads, wider roads, and fewer interruptions, allowing more traffic to flow at any one time. Problem solved, right? Wrong. In this video, I'm going to show you evidence from around the world that demonstrates that the road building frenzy we've been on for the last 80 or so years has been exactly the wrong thing to do, and why governments still seem to turn a blind eye to it, wasting billions of dollars, pounds, or euros for no benefit and great cost. It's because there are two fundamental issues going on at the same time. The first is that more roads actually lead to more traffic. Yep, as much as we like to think we can, we cannot build our way out of solving congestion. It sounds crazy, but it's true. It's called the fundamental law of road congestion. Have a guess when it was discovered. 1962, an American economist called Anthony Downs realized that, and I quote, when road capacity increases, traffic increases in proportion to the new capacity. So when you build new roads or add in an extra lane here or there, you get more traffic, not less. Essentially, as you improve a road, you make it faster and easier to drive along it. Therefore, people will, quite rationally, choose to use it more. They will choose to drive. Now, the issue is that this increased desire to drive continues until you have so many more cars on the road that you're back to square one. You have the same level of congestion, only you have more cars and have spent a whole truckload of money. It's a process called induced demand. And it sounds weird, doesn't it? Because in the real world, it feels like the opposite is happening. It feels like traffic is getting worse, and yet we're always one step behind being able to beat congestion. When in actual fact, our interventions are making it worse. We are encouraging people to drive when they otherwise might have taken a different mode of transport, or we're encouraging them to drive instead of not taking that journey at all, or we're encouraging people to drive further using that increased capacity. Now, as I said, this is not some hack science. This is something that we have known about for over 70 years, and there are reams and reams of papers on the subject. But the problem with induced demand is that it can't be quantified accurately, and it naturally leads to a question that's quite hard to answer, whether some of those new cars on the road had previously been put off from making the journey in the first place. So actually, is the new capacity simply satisfying demand that already existed, a so-called latent demand, and therefore that new capacity is actually of benefit? I mean, to that I would say, in densely populated countries and cities, there will always be more potential road users than there is capacity. So latent demand would therefore always exist. And therefore, if you keep making travel by car easier, faster, and cheaper than the alternatives, more people will do it. More people will drive, which is therefore induced demand. And that's exactly what you see if you go back to the 1960s, when this concept was first spotted. Car use per capita was much lower then than it is today, but because it was made so easy to drive, because it was prioritized above all else, we induced demand. It's no accident the car was seen as the ultimate way of getting around. There were plenty of lobby groups pushing for it, but ultimately, the justification for it at a policy level was that bigger, better, faster roads were gonna make us richer. A new academic discipline was born, transport economics. Stay with me, because here, things turn a little bit sinister. The basis of transport economic theory is that the quickest way of getting from A to B is the best because it saves time, and time, as you know, is money.
Man, is it ever economical. I see all my customers every week, and all I spend for gas now is $2. Right, Joe?
The notion of the saving of travel time has been seen as the largest single economic benefit from transport investment generally.
He would know. He was the former chief scientist at the UK Department of Transport. And up to a point, this assertion is correct. You go to a country with a road network hamstrung by geographic constraints like Nepal, half of which is the Himalayas, or Colombia, half of which is the Andes, and you can see why. In both of those countries, I've experienced firsthand just how hard it is to get around on the ground, leaving large parts of those countries isolated and economically worse off, even though they were also absolute paradise.
However, in reality, what we've seen in more economically developed countries is that time has not been saved. Instead, people have used that increase in speed to travel further. Time is not saved, distance travelled increases. So the fundamental principle of transport economics, the foundation and justification of road building over the last 80 or so years, is therefore not correct.
You might well now be thinking, that is a load of rubbish. But you can clearly see this in effect when you look at data that shows how we travel. So as David Metz explained, it is clear from countless years of evidence that humans have a set travel time budget. Basically, we seem to be programmed to be happy to travel for, on average, 1 hour per day. 100 years ago, that meant that the amount of distance a person could travel in a year was about 1,000 miles. But as technology improved and new methods of travel were invented, like railways and bicycles, so the amount of distance covered increased. However, and this is the important bit, not the time. And you can actually see this in UK Department for Transport data over the last 50 years. The amount of journeys taken per person has remained constant at about 1,000 per year. But instead of seeing the time spent travelling decreasing because of faster roads and increased capacity, you can see that it has in actual fact remained constant at about 370 hours per year. What's changed then is that the distance travelled has increased dramatically. We have spent the same amount of time on the road, not being more productive, not making more money, and not adding to the GDP. And whilst this might be UK data, it's true across the world.
The notion that we should estimate the benefit of transport investment based on time saving is, in my view, not sound. The basic benefit are access benefits, which are different in kind from time-saving benefits. But the transport economists have never managed to recognise this.
You can see that as the car became ever more popular, the distance travelled exploded. But that undermines the founding principle of transport economics because no time was saved. I mean, changed our lifestyles, right? It changed how we live and where we live. We could live in houses with more space, or we could live in rural areas and commute into cities. We could sprawl, so we have. Now, you could argue that initially, at least, this ability to travel further also did allow for economic development because businesses could reach new markets or jobs could be boosted in areas that were otherwise cut off. But what's interesting is that now even distance travelled has stopped increasing. In fact, it stopped at the turn of the century, leading many experts to think that we had reached peak car. There was no advantage to travelling any further. Roads had got as good as they needed to be. So, am I right in thinking then that up to about the turn of the century, there was some kind of benefit to improving the road network because people were able to travel further in the same time, which you could imagine then, as you said, would allow people to access more job opportunities or, from a business perspective, new markets. But then after that, if we reach plateau car, and anything after that has been of limited value?
Yes, I would say so. The observable benefit, I think, is quite marginal.
So it seems then that over the last 20 or 30 years, in spite of billions of dollars or pounds or euros of investment, we haven't seen any benefit. Now, what seems crazy to me, bonkers in fact, is why this hasn't yet filtered into policy. Because I'm sure you can think of examples where you live of roads having their capacity increased. One look at England's National Highways Plan shows their justification for it, and predictably in the United States, the same is of course true. There, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill from 2021, of the funds allocated so far, more than half has gone straight into highways. Half of that is in maintenance. The other half is highways expansion. So more tarmac, more concrete, more cars. Why?
People find it hard to give up because it implies that they were wrong beforehand. So that's the rather unsatisfactory situation in which we find ourselves.
It all seems pretty crazy, but it tallies up with what I heard from the former Minister for Transport in Wales, Lee Waters, when I interviewed him last year.
Well, it's not really widely understood, I don't think, not even in transport circles. And that's what really fascinated me, is what's driving this under the surface and how do we get into the plumbing of the system? Because a lot of these things we now take for granted For example, how long does a pedestrian have to cross a crossing point? Who makes that decision? How is that decided? And what impact does that have? And once you start to get into that, you realize, again, that's quite deliberate. So seeing to increase the amount of time a pedestrian has to cross the road, which in an aging society, you'd think, we're going to need to think more about, is actually dictated by economic formulas. So if you take longer to cross the road, you have traffic stopped for longer, and that is seen by the Treasury in their Green Book formulas to harm the economy. Now, I think that's crackers, but it's not as simple as saying we should change this, because were you to try and change it, these other forces, which you can't see and aren't even aware of, are pushing the other way. And deeply embedded in the transport thinking is this idea that the role of the transport profession is to allow cars to go faster and to go more directly, and for everything else, really, essentially, to get out of the way. And that is not an accident, that is by design.
I checked in with another leading academic in this field as well, a professor of economic geography at the London School of Economics, Steve Gibbons. Now, he said that while transport economic models are increasingly complex, now building in induced demand, although arguably not by as much as they should, as well as a million other elements, they still operate in the main on the fundamental and seemingly false principle of time saving. So, for example, here in the UK, the Lower Thames Crossing, which is a new tunnel and accompanying 12.9 miles of motorway to cross the River Thames, has just been approved. Its cost will be approximately £9 billion. It's hoped that it will relieve congestion on the motorway ring around London, and the Director of National Highways said it would unlock growth with quicker, safer, and more reliable journeys. His agency said that even though it will cost $9 billion, it will add $45 billion to the UK's GDP. Now, is it going to work? My guess is no. As we've heard, if you remove barriers from driving, people will do it more, driving further and driving at more convenient times of day. So what have you got for your £9 billion? More CO2, more air pollution, more noise pollution, same traffic congestion. And when you look, these kind of infrastructure projects are everywhere, and with those cost-benefit analyses to supposedly back them up. So in Houston, Texas, $9 billion has been allocated by the State Department for Transport to widen the city's highways. Thousands of homes and businesses are being flattened to make way for more lanes of traffic, in spite of previous lessons in the same city. So in 2008, work concluded on the 26-lane Katy Highway. Journey times for most drivers got worse. Now, a Texas Department of Transport spokesperson did tell the Guardian newspaper that it was a false assertion that it had made things worse and that actually population growth was to blame. But correct me if I'm wrong, if population growth is the main issue, then surely prioritising an efficient method of transport, both from a space and resource perspective, over literally anything else is just sheer lunacy. We have 50 years of evidence of traffic congestion, which we have so far failed to beat. So why are we doing the same thing again?
There's an awful lot of embedded knowledge and technique, which people find it hard to give up.
What would happen, do you think, if we stop increasing capacity?
Well, nothing much.
Would traffic get worse?
No, there's an equilibrium that gets set up.
We haven't got a countrywide case of this in action yet, but there are plenty of local examples where you get a sense of what might happen if we stopped. And the best example of all is the Cheonggyecheon stream in downtown Seoul, Korea.
At the turn of the century, the Cheonggye district was one of the most congested, polluted parts of the capital. At its heart was an elevated highway with 8 lanes of traffic carrying 168,000 cars per day. The area was choked with noise, pollution, and was rapidly in decline. However, in 2003, the newly elected city mayor shut the road, demolished it, and reinstated a watercourse that had flowed there 50 years previously. Yep, a stream. You can imagine the reaction. Where would 168,000 cars go? Surely it would choke the city. Seems like a valid question, but the answer is no, it didn't. Research in the aftermath showed that people simply changed their chosen mode of transport. Bus use increased, subway use increased. Meanwhile, incredibly, traffic on surrounding roads did not increase. Now, was it because the Chongqing district simply died? People stopped going there? Nope. The once dying area was now thriving. New businesses opened, tourists flocked there, perhaps in part due to improved air quality and reduced air temperatures. So successful has it been, in fact, that city authorities have subsequently removed another 15 elevated highways. This is an extreme example, and it's in an urban area, which of course will have a different impact in comparison to a rural one, but it illustrates that removing road capacity doesn't necessarily cause traffic chaos. And in fact, there are plenty of other examples across the world where road closures don't cause traffic chaos. In fact, not only do they not cause them, but they actively reduce traffic problems on nearby roads as well. And even in the USA, there is already precedence there too for removing elevated expressways, including this one in San Francisco, the Embarcadero. Ultimately, it was an earthquake and not political will that caused its demise. But 34 years on, few would ever imagine that a freeway had taken away 2.5 miles of precious waterside real estate. Lessons like this bring us back to an earlier point, which is to question whether or not roads and cars have actually brought about the economic wealth that we assume they have. Because what if there's an alternative? In the case of that Embarcadero freeway, it didn't kill San Francisco. San Francisco now has some of the highest land values in the United States. Is that land better used as a road or for real estate? According to Google, generally in the city, it costs about $10 million per acre. A 2.5 mile section of freeway is roughly equivalent to 50 acres. To illustrate how much space roads take up, here is a simple example taken from the excellent book Movement by Talia Verkada. The amount of land given over to the Valberg motorway junction is exactly the same as the size of the village next door, which has 2,000 people living in it. Of course, I'm not suggesting that we strip out all motorways and freeways, but it's not just roads that need to be taken into consideration. What about the space taken up by cars when they're not being driven? In the USA, estimates that the proportion of land use in cities given over to parking are about 25%. According to work by the late Donald Shoup, if you add up all of the parking spaces in America, you get an area the size of Connecticut. And by having so much free parking, back in 2002, when he did the work, the USA is effectively subsidizing it to the tune of between $128 and $374 billion per year. That is a lot of money in today's standards, but back in 2002, I mean, imagine what could be unlocked if you didn't have to allocate so much space and money to parking. My mind is blown. Of course, people still do need to travel. So what could an alternative look like? Essentially, we're talking trains, buses, and active transport like cycling and walking. And I was wondering whether or not governments and authorities still place a value on these kind of methods of transport. And yes, it turns out that they do. In fact, the UK government published an excellent white paper nearly a decade ago called The Value of Cycling. We should, I think, be as sceptical about this as we are about other cost-benefit analysis when it comes to roads. But we needn't actually worry about the influence of this particular report, because in the government's own guidelines on how to value cycling infrastructure, there is no mention of it at all. Now, fortunately, these guidelines are 980 pages shorter than the ones to value motor vehicles, so even I was able to digest them. And in them, there are lots of advantages listed, like how cycling commuters are fitter and healthier, requiring fewer days off work, and also less healthcare interventions than people who commute by car. But there is no mention of directly assisting the economy. In fact, the only mention at all I could find was something called a decongestion benefit, which is that enough people cycle, it will reduce traffic and therefore speed up car drivers, who can then save time and make us more money. Yes, I am not joking, it's in there. Now, while I'm not fixated only on the economy, it's important in this case for one particular reason, and that is that when it comes to government policy, it would appear that unless you're driving, you do not have an economic value. Car drivers are worth more than pedestrians and cyclists. So it's easy to see why when it comes to active transport, it's not high on a government's agenda. What we have is a situation which is very succinctly summed up by Omar Raphael Bor as: when roads are seen as something that promote the economy and make us richer, and buses, bike lanes and walkability are perceived as policies that are good for the environment, then clearly roads are going to win most times. I think he's right, but that makes it all the more frustrating. The basic principle of transport economics seems to be flawed. Roads seem to be expensive. And if we look at examples from other countries, we can see that active transport can be good. In Freiburg in Germany, as an example, there the bicycle represents 19% of all journeys taken. But yet it requires just 1% of the total investment to travel and transport infrastructure. The car, meanwhile, has a 42% share of journeys, but requires 57% of the investment. And public transport requires 42% of the investment for just 18% share. Now, this is something that I want to understand a little bit more of, so I turned next to the capital of cycling, the Netherlands. I want to know whether or not one of the most progressive countries in the world, with an incredibly high use of cycling infrastructure, has got it all worked out. To find out, I spoke to Marco de Brommelstraat, a professor of urban mobility futures, and what he had to say, I must admit, really shocked me.
If you come to the Netherlands, what you will find is the best version of the wrong system. So what we have done, and especially under pressure, it wasn't always like this, right? The Netherlands was actually following the lead of countries like the UK. The Buchanan Report, we invited American engineers, traffic engineers in the 50s and 60s to build our cities more like the cities that are like London or New York. But actually under huge resistance from the population, that shifted in the 70s. So everything you see now is a result of that. And since then, we have been working diligently on creating conditions for people to make to offer them more choice, I would even say. Because at the same time, we also became quite rich. We were suddenly a liquid gas exporter. And because we were very rich and we had this idea of sustainable mobility, what we actually built in the Netherlands is a system where you can have it all. So you can very easily cycle everywhere if you want to. Public transport is of high quality, but also the car infrastructure system is probably the best in the world.
Is that because, like, the constant drive to build new roads and improve existing ones, is that because the cycling infrastructure isn't enough to allow the Netherlands to be economically successful and to continue to thrive?
Well, that's a big question. Let's first start with answering that. I think the bicycle will never replace the mobility options that the car gives fully. And you can build the same argument around trains, right? So bikes can never cover easily larger distances, and trains can never offer the door-to-door connectivity that cars offer. So cars are this ideal, typical way, and we organize our entire society, also in the Netherlands, around that concept. But if you combine the bike with the train, and that's actually the hidden gem of the Netherlands, where about 600,000 people daily commute by combining the bicycle and the train, then you have a fully fledged alternative that actually supports almost any urban conglomeration, any form. and also supports economic viability. But maybe going back why the Netherlands has such an exemplary car infrastructure as well, I think it has to do with that point of getting on the table in the 70s, fighting for alternative choices for people, building the bike paths. Because I would say that we don't have 32,000 kilometers of separated bike paths. We also have 32,000 kilometers of separated car infrastructure because of that. Right, so we created a system, and again, we had quite some money to spend on that. You can see the Netherlands, and everywhere you see fancy and expensive bridges and tunnels that are very expensive solutions to get cyclists and car drivers out of each other's way. And for cyclists, that's of course great because it's much safer to not engage with drivers. But that also created at the same time a system where car driving became very convenient as well. Many countries can replicate what we've done, but there's a huge cost. And the cost is that we are not solving the problem at its core. We are still creating systems that are ignoring the elephant in the room, that are still built around a car-dominated urban development patterns. And we can get to that maybe as well, similar levels of motonormativity as in the UK.
Am I right in thinking, though, that in order to reverse this like car-centric society that we have, it would need wholesale change in virtually every aspect of life, right? In terms of where a lot of people live would be very inconvenient suddenly, because a lot of people live in developments where you need a car. We would need to see new shops opening. We would see the reversal of supermarkets. We would, like people's work would change. Is that feasible?
Well, that all changed in the last 70 years, right? So in the 1950s, the average distance that a Dutch person would spend per day traveling was around 7 kilometers per day. So that's 2 generations ago, right? So my father actually grew up in a world where there were almost no cars. And that was the average distance. And indeed, you're right, the entire society was organized around that potential for mobility. And we completely overturned that and created a system that has a certain element of lock-in, or as Ivan Illich would call a radical monopoly. It creates, so basically the car creates distances that only the car can cover. And our entire system is built around that. But again, it's 50 years, right? In the history of our cities, it's a blip. But we have changed. So currently, an average Dutch person spends 42 kilometers per day traveling, and mostly because they have to, right? It's not a choice. You have to cover these distances for work, for leisure, and for your supermarket. So reflecting back on that, I don't think that car dependency or cars are the problem. They are a symbol of an underlying problem. And I think it's much more important to realize that the mobility dependence and the traffic engineering mindset that we have institutionalized, they create that problem, right? Within the language of traffic engineering, we are all homo economicus. We are all egoistic and isolated individuals optimizing our own utility. As a result, obviously, we start believing that, and as a result, we want to have a car because the car is then the ideal solution. It offers us this potential. So we need to get away from cars are bad and bikes are good, I think, and towards traffic engineering has a problematic, limited view on society, and that's what we need to tackle.
Now, let it be said, I am not anti-car. I own a car and I realise that our car has allowed me and my family to live life in a way that we couldn't do without. And in fact, when I think about it, cars have given me incredible opportunities. Ironically enough, I don't think I could have become a professional cyclist without one. However, times are changing. As leading transport planner Chris Carter told me, if we properly measured the negative externalities of car usage, then we would have a dramatically different perspective on our own transport choices. Basically, if we realised the true cost of cars, we probably wouldn't use them anywhere near as much. And perhaps if we properly measured and talked about the benefits afforded from other modes of transport, we might also place a different value on them as well. In fact, what I think is needed is a transport planning system that places a true value on all modes of transport, whether that's positive or negative. Perhaps then that could then end up being reflected by policymakers, and maybe then our world might start to look a little bit different, maybe a little bit better. I make no apologies for the title. This is a frank video looking at the risks of cycling, because a lot of people I know are scared when riding, or too scared to even contemplate riding. But is that fear misplaced? Have we got it wrong? Because the reality is that perhaps we shouldn't be afraid of cycling, we should be afraid of driving. Let me explain. By looking at what's actually happening out on the roads, by looking at collisions and crashes and at long-term health outcomes, we can see that the picture is very different to what people think. How afraid of flying are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
Probably around a 5.
Okay, and what about driving?
0, happy driving.
So how scared are you guys of flying on a scale of 1 to 10?
Scared of flying.
And what about driving, again, out of 10?
Probably a 5.
I spoke with quite a number of people, and it seems that a significant proportion are indeed afraid of flying. And while people were more scared of driving than I expected, it was significantly lower. And as for cycling? And what about cycling? If I asked you to cycle through Bath?
No. 10.
Maybe 4 on the scale.
Okay, all right, so you'd be a little bit more anxious about cycling compared to other things?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Here's something to think about, though. So according to the international research and data analysis company YouGov, 21% of British people have arachnophobia, an extreme fear of spiders. Now this is despite us not having any remotely poisonous spiders, let alone ones that can kill you. In Australia, though, a land full of spiders who can kill you, only 5% of people have arachnophobia. Now, to me, this illustrates that fear can be irrational. British people do not need to fear spiders, but do. Australians, blooming well, should fear spiders, but don't. Now, how does this relate to transport, though? We heard on the street that a lot of people have a fear of flying. According to the International Civil Aviation Organization, up to 40% of people do. Meanwhile, the fear of driving is half that. And yet, if you look at the statistics, driving is significantly more dangerous than flying, both in sheer numbers and also per mile travel. And what then about cycling? Well, when you look at the statistics, they're pretty scary. So per billion miles travelled here in the UK, 3 people on average are killed whilst driving, compared to 24 people who are killed whilst cycling. In the USA, it's 13.3 people killed whilst driving, compared to 55 people killed whilst cycling. And even in the Netherlands, the global utopia of cycling, with more miles of bike path per capita than anywhere else on the planet, 25 people are killed while cycling per billion miles, compared to just 2.9 people killed whilst driving. However, these statistics don't tell the whole story. Firstly, let's look at how those deaths are reported. So the total numbers are hard to compare due to the different amounts of people who drive versus cycle. So to equal it out, or at least try to, and enable some kind of comparison, they're often reported instead as deaths per billion miles travelled. But it feels to me like there is a flaw in comparing billion vehicle miles as well, because surely, as cyclists, we're slower. So to reach 1 billion miles would take, 5, even 6 times longer. And it's not the distance that exposes us to risk per se, but the time on the road. In the same way that air travel results in 0.003 deaths per billion miles, aeroplanes travel 15 or 20 times faster than cars, and so people travel further, which again skews the safety statistics in their favour. Now, if we adjust that billion miles travelled to equal out time on the road, what would it do to the cycling statistics? Well, here in the UK, if we say that bikes are 5 times slower than cars, and we divide the number of fatalities per billion miles by that amount, we get slightly less than 5 fatalities from cycling, as opposed to 24. Now, it is still more than driving, which is 3, remember, but it is a much smaller difference. In the USA, however, we're now looking at 11 fatalities from cycling, as opposed to 13.3 in cars. And what about the Netherlands? Well, their figures for cycling risk are so high that they have given their government something to think about. Now, some people there are pointing to the low numbers of helmet use, which is an opinion you would struggle to find statistics to back up, but that is perhaps a topic for another day. Most striking, though, is the stat that 38% of those cycling fatalities actually involved no other vehicle at all. And at the same time, it's also worth noting that the pedestrian fatalities in the Netherlands are nearly 3 times lower than the European average, which is something that anti-cyclists should be aware of, given how dangerous some people perceive bikes to be. So far then, we've heard that people are often scared of things that they don't need to be scared of. We've also seen that the dangers of cycling are perhaps not quite as acute as they might first appear, or at least the statistics can be misleading. But by far and away, the most compelling fact, and one that might take a while for you to get your head around, is that the health benefits of cycling are so profound that over an 18-year period, someone who just cycles to work and back has a near 50% lower risk of dying of anything than someone who drives. To explain more, I'm speaking to Bruce White, who led a detailed piece of research into the health outcomes of 82,000 people observed over an 18-year period. Mr. White and his colleagues found that compared with non-active commuters, cyclists had a 20% lower risk of receiving a mental health-related prescription, a 24% lower risk of cardiovascular disease hospitalisation, a 30% lower risk of receiving a cardiovascular disease-related prescription, 24% lower risk of cancer hospitalisation, and a 51% lower risk of cancer death. Most importantly of all, though, they had a 47% lower risk of death from any cause, including road traffic accidents.
We looked at both, it was a commuting question from the census, so it basically asked you how do you get to house, what's your usual method of travel to work. And what we did was we compared people who cycle to work with people who walk to work with everyone else. So everyone else was people who travel by car, which is the majority of people, but also people use public transport as their main mode of travel. So we were wanting to see what the impacts were for walking and for cycling to work. And what we found was that over this period of 18 years of follow-up, there was much better health outcomes for all-cause mortality, basically people dying for any causes for cycling, better outcomes for any type of hospitalisation, lower cardiovascular disease, hospitalisation mortality, lower cancer mortality, and lower prescriptions for drugs for anxiety and depression amongst cyclists. And we had similar, probably not as strong results for walking as well. So walking had positive outcomes, not quite as strong as cycling though.
Do you know then from the results whether or not it's the commuting that has provided these health benefits, or is it that people who are more likely to choose to cycle to work might already have other circumstances in their life? I don't know, maybe like their diet is better, or they do other kind of exercise in the week. I mean, how can we separate that out?
It's a really good question, and we can't really, and that's a weakness in the study, and when you write these studies, that's one of the things we pointed out. Essentially, what we know about people is from what's collected at the census, and the census question is purely about how do you get to work. It's not about your general level of physical activity in other parts of life. There are other studies like this that have shown similar results. Though biobank study, there's been studies of commuting using biobank data, which does ask those questions, and you do see the same sorts of benefits, maybe not quite as high as what we showed for cycling. We can't separate out the fact that people might be doing other things in their life. It's a wee bit like chicken and egg. Do you know, if you're healthier, you're more likely to be able to cycle and walk. On the other hand, people who walk and cycle to work, it might mean that they do other things as well. That means that they're more likely to do sport or whatever. So it's very, very difficult to separate out. What we did do, though, essentially controlled for anyone who'd been in hospital for cancer, cardiovascular disease, or a mental health diagnosis. So we took them out. Essentially, their impact was taken out. So that, in a sense, gets rid of the people that we would be comparing to who might have been ill already and who probably couldn't have walked or cycled. So we've tried to control for this as much as we could.
That's really cool, isn't it? One of the most important aspects of the results for me was this all-cause mortality risk. Because I'm fascinated to know that, does it take into account the risks of cycling itself? Presumably it does.
It does. Yeah, so one of our results, and you can see this in the paper, is that we show that people who cycled to work had twice the likelihood of being hospitalised after a road traffic collision. So overall, that's in the all-cause mortality. So the all-cause mortality takes account of that and shows that there's still a massive health benefit from walking and cycling.
Bruce White has completed another piece of research which estimates the size of the health benefits in economic terms of active transport to Scotland as it stands today. You know how much that 47% reduced risk is worth? 0.75 billion euros. Now, in a population of 5 million, that's pretty significant. The fact that driving to work is less safe than cycling is going to be lost on most people because we feel safe in our cars. They're designed to insulate us from the world around us, including catastrophic accidents. But the reality is that if driving forms part of a sedentary lifestyle, then actually, whilst you may have a slightly lower risk of dying in a road traffic accident, you are going to be accelerating your demise in other areas, literally sitting yourself to death. And actually, it's not just the inactivity either. There's a raft of evidence out there that shows that air pollution is worse inside a car compared to outside. And that's air pollution that can trigger a whole raft of health issues, cardiovascular disease being one of them, not just for you as the driver, but also for your passengers. It's particularly bad for kids. Some people might point to what many consider to be a victim-blaming culture that makes sure cyclists wear high-vis and helmets so that we can protect ourselves from the dangers of cars, which makes cycling seem less safe because you don't need to wear high-vis or a helmet in a car, do you? Some people point to a lack of segregated cycling infrastructure. The sharing roads with cars and heavy vehicles feels intimidating. The sheer size, weight and power of motor vehicles means that they do feel threatening, and you don't need much imagination to picture what might happen if things go wrong. And some people point to levels of mobile phone use while driving, and certainly it is disconcerting to be riding along fully aware that the person driving towards you is not looking at you or the road ahead, but instead at a phone screen. I think it's a combination of all of these factors, but also the peculiar way in which the media fixate on cycling-related incidents and report them more frequently than other vehicles. Of course, what we see in the media is more often than not a direct result of what the majority of people actually choose to read. So this is perhaps just a reflection of cyclist deaths being of interest because they're maybe less common. However, it could also be because of how the media choose to report it. So one fascinating piece
piece of research from here in the UK from Fevier and Aldred analysed newspaper articles and found stark trends around reporting style. They said that narratives tend to erase driver agency in collisions while highlighting agency for cyclists, and pedestrian deaths just appear as isolated incidents rather than as part of a wider structural pattern. Basically, cars are responsible for crashes, not drivers, unless the driver has gone rogue. Cyclists, meanwhile, are almost always referenced. But of most interest to us now, though, was that the articles examined often reported cyclist deaths with reference to other recent cyclist deaths, suggesting that they're part of a pattern and implying greater frequency of events, basically making it seem worse than it is. And the same is true across the world. So similar research has found similar things in the USA, in Canada, in Australia, and beyond. It's a result of motonormativity, a societal blindness to cars, but aspects of the cycling media can also be guilty of fanning the flames. One British website now boasts 920 posts to its near miss of the day feature. Now, they say that it highlights poor driving standards. I'd argue that it's fear-mongering. Why? Because we know that cycling is not as dangerous as it first looks. We know that it is, in fact, safer long-term than driving. And we also know why it doesn't always feel this way. But what, though, about the elephant in the room? Because we're not actually talking about statistics here, are we? We're talking about real people dying. And while it's easy to be dispassionate about numbers, every one of those deaths is a tragedy. So in some countries, like here in the UK, cycling is safer now than it has been in years, and yet still lives are wasted on the roads. In the USA, the statistics have worsened every year since 2010. Clearly, work still needs to be done to make the roads safer. However, I passionately believe that the biggest threat to health is from our own perception of danger. Get more people on bikes and they should live happier, healthier, longer lives. Now, that's not to diminish the fear of cycling, because roads can be intimidating and very scary places. But I'm struck again by that analogy of people with a phobia of spiders. The fact that phobias are 4 times higher in a country with no poisonous spiders than one with them makes me feel that if we can actually just get people out on bikes, it can only help to solve more of these issues. Now, I appreciate this is a really difficult topic and it has been a frank discussion, but I'd be super interested to hear your thoughts. So please get involved in the comment section down below. Do you believe that the risks of cycling are overblown? Or actually, do you think that I'm perhaps underplaying it here in this video? Get involved in the comment section. Very much look forward to reading them.